I'm 72 years old, and looking back at the man I was 40 years ago, it breaks my heart to realize I spent nearly a decade building a prison and calling it love. I used to wake up every single morning asking how I could earn my wife's approval, ironing her clothes and managing her moods like a second job, all while starving for a single spark of the warmth I was desperately chasing. I thought I was being a good husband by setting myself on fire to keep her warm, but I finally learned the hardest lesson of my life. You cannot respect someone who doesn't respect themselves. Last night I sat down to write a letter to my 30-year-old self, the man who thought begging was the same thing as devotion, because I want to tell you about the exact moment I stopped jumping when she spoke, and finally decided that being alone was better than being invisible. If you're currently shrinking yourself to fit into someone else's life, you need to hear why my biggest regret isn't that the marriage ended. It's that I waited 40 years to realize that worth isn't earned, it's recognized. Let me tell you what happened. Not to blame anyone, not to seek sympathy. I was in my early 30s when this story takes place, married about 8 years, and somewhere along the way, I had become someone I didn't recognize. Every morning I woke up thinking, what can I do today to make her happy? What can I say to earn her approval? How can I be enough? That's the first lesson, and it's the most important one I'll tell you today. When you wake up asking how to earn someone's love, you've already lost yourself. I didn't know that then. I thought I was being a good husband. I thought love meant sacrifice. I thought if I just tried harder, gave more, bent further, eventually she would see my worth and finally give me the warmth I was starving for. So I did everything. I cooked meals. I bought gifts. I ran errands for her mother. I ironed her clothes. I apologized after every fight, even when I wasn't wrong, just to keep the peace. I managed her moods like a job. I studied her face for signs of displeasure, the way a prisoner studies his guard. And here's what I understand now that I couldn't see then. She didn't ask me to do any of that. Not really. Oh, she made requests. She made demands. She made it clear when I fell short. But the begging, the pleading, the desperate chasing, that was all me. I had built a prison and called it love, then wondered why I couldn't breathe. There's a psychology to this that I wish someone had explained to me when I was 30. In any relationship, there's a balance of power. When one person constantly seeks approval and the other constantly withholds it, something unhealthy takes root. The seeker gives away pieces of himself, hoping each sacrifice will be the one that finally earns what he's chasing. And the withholder? She grows accustomed to being pursued. She confuses his desperation with devotion. She mistakes his emptiness for love. That's what happened to us. I became smaller and smaller, and she became more and more distant. The more I gave, the less she valued it. The more I begged, the less respect she had. Not because she was cruel, because that's how human beings work. You cannot respect someone who doesn't respect themselves. I remember one morning specifically. She asked me to iron her blouse before work. Normally, I would have jumped up, grateful for the chance to serve, hoping this small act might finally earn me a kind word. But something in me that morning, I don't know what, made me pause. I kept sitting there, drinking my tea, looking at my phone. She said, "Did you hear me?" I nodded and kept sitting. The look on her face, I'll never forget it. Confusion first, then irritation, then something else, something I hadn't seen in years, a flicker of uncertainty. She wasn't used to this version of me, the version that didn't jump when she spoke. That moment taught me something I've never forgotten. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is nothing. Not revenge, not punishment, just stillness, just a quiet refusal to participate in your own diminishment. Throughout that day, she kept testing me. Small requests, run this errand, fix this thing, call this person. And I kept saying no, not angrily, not dramatically, just calmly. Not now. I'm busy. You can handle that. And with each refusal, something shifted in the air between us. The power was returning to where it always should have been. Equal ground. By evening, she was agitated, pacing, pretending to watch TV, but watching me instead. Finally, she asked, "What's wrong with you today?" And I said something I had never said before. Not in anger, not in accusation, just in truth. I said, "I'm tired of being the only one trying in this marriage." She wanted to argue. I could see it. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. Because she knew. She had always known. She just wasn't used to me saying it out loud. That's another lesson. Truth spoken calmly is more powerful than anger spoken loudly. That night, I didn't make dinner. I didn't soothe her. I didn't chase her around the house trying to fix whatever mood she was in. I just existed in my own space, in my own peace, and she felt it. The absence of my chasing, the silence where my pleading used to be. Later in bed, she spoke softly. "You've been distant. Are you upset with me?" I turned to her and said something I had needed to say for years. "I'm not upset. I'm done begging. I'm done being the only one who tries." She said I was overreacting, said she never asked me to beg. And I reminded her, every dismissal, every time she made me feel small, every gift ignored, every effort taken for granted. I didn't shout. I just listed them, quietly, like items on a grocery receipt. And in the silence that followed, she realized something. I was telling the truth. And truth, when it's been buried long enough, feels like violence when it's finally unearthed. I want to pause here and explain something about that moment. For years, I have believed that if I just explained myself better, if I just found the right words, she would finally understand and finally love me the way I needed. I was wrong. You cannot negotiate someone's respect. You cannot convince someone to value you. That has to come from them, or it's not real. What changed that day wasn't her, it was me. I stopped trying to control her response and started controlling my own participation. I stopped offering what wasn't wanted. I stopped chasing what wasn't given freely. I stopped setting myself on fire to keep her warm. And here's what happened. She noticed. Not because I manipulated her, but because the absence of my energy created a space she had never felt before. My constant giving had been filling a void she didn't even know existed. When I stopped, she felt the emptiness, and in that emptiness, she finally saw me. The next morning, I left early, said little, ignored her calls, and when I came home that evening, I handed her an envelope. Inside were separation papers. Her hands trembled. Her eyes went wide. She tried to argue, to plead, to convince me to stay, and I said nothing. The man who once begged for her love was gone. Not angry, not vengeful, just gone. She whispered, "You'll regret this." I didn't answer, because I knew something she didn't. I had already regretted staying. I had already regretted shrinking. I had already regretted every day I spent begging for something that should have been freely given. Leaving wasn't the regret. Leaving was the remedy. Now, at 72, I look back on that younger man and I feel something between sadness and gratitude. Sadness that he suffered so long. Grateful that he finally learned. And here's what I want to tell you, young person listening to an old man's story. Love is not supposed to hurt like that. Not the kind that lasts. Not the kind that heals. Real love doesn't require you to beg. Real love doesn't make you small. Real love doesn't demand that you disappear so someone else can feel big. I used to think love was something you earned, like a promotion, like a reward for good behavior. I used to think if I just tried hard enough, sacrificed enough, gave enough, I would finally be worthy. If you're young and reading this, if you're in a relationship where you're constantly chasing, constantly apologizing, constantly shrinking, hear me. You cannot pour from an empty cup. You cannot love someone well if you've abandoned yourself. The best thing you can give another person is not your sacrifice, it's your wholeness. And if that person doesn't want your wholeness, if they prefer you small and desperate and begging, then they don't want you. They want what you do for them. And that's not love. That's consumption. I'm 72 now. I've been married again to a woman who never once made me beg, who saw my worth without me having to prove it, who gave freely what the first woman hoarded like currency. And do you know the difference? It wasn't her. It was me. I finally knew what I deserved, and because I knew it, I wouldn't accept less. That's the final lesson. The one I wish I could tell my 30-year-old self. You teach people how to treat you, not by demanding, not by begging, not by explaining, but by what you're willing to accept, by what you walk away from, by what you refuse to participate in. The day I stopped begging, I didn't lose her. I lost the illusion that I needed her, and in that loss, I found myself. Don't wait until you're 72 to learn that. Learn it now. Learn it today. Learn it before you spend another year shrinking for someone who should be helping you grow, because you deserve to be loved without begging.